Sweet. So welcome, Spencer Ploessl. So we've got Spencer with me, who has over 15 years working within creative design and marketing. So he's had roles as creative director, brand manager. He's been in marketing comms. And like me, he's got a passion for design. Again, very much a creative and has quite an a la carte of proficiencies, if I would be right in saying so. And, one of the things that kind of stood out to me with Spencer was, again, his kind of positivity and enthusiasm. So thanks for joining me today, Spencer, for a chat about marketing.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thanks for the intro, Sam. Appreciate, you reaching out and us connecting and getting a chance to chat about the awesome world of marketing and creative stuff. So cheers.
No worries. And, I think your tagline, I take brands to places they've never seen before. Again, I quite like that as well. So credit on coming up with that one. So in terms of kind of introduction, could you just kind of, again, my introduction was obviously, very basic. So in terms of your background and experience, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been a startup agency owner in marketing and web design space. I've gone into being a marketing communications director, building a local brewery brand, to in and out of the agency world here in the States, as well as then also doing freelance stuff for, like 15 plus years from, way back a long time ago when I used to design like maybe a logo for someone, friends and family discount for like $200, right? I've come from that time in my life with a bachelor's of fine arts degree in graphic design, but at the same time honing in on my business skill sets, where now I'm more positioned as a marketing and creative consulting, helping people and taking brands, like I say, to places they've never seen before. And that means a lot of different things to a lot of different brands, companies, and organizations, but helping in the digital sphere and looking at your brand more holistically than just compartmentalizing marketing or your website or your marketing strategy or digital ad spend, but making sure all parts work together to actually meet your needs and subsequently your goals for profitable revenue generation, right? So, yeah.
Exactly. And in terms of, one thing that I noticed that you talked about was connecting brands to customers. So, what do you mean by that kind of, that message, and what's the approach here when you work with a brand?
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest thing for me is gonna, for not just me but everyone, right? We're all trying to connect with our customers, but really, peeling back the surface, picking up that rug and really diving underneath it to really understand how do we connect with the right audience. So many people get caught up in the fact that they think that they can just sell their products or services to everyone and anyone, which I understand that to a degree. Like maybe my product could be used by everyone and anyone, but at the end of the day, there's going to be a specific subset of individuals that are going to be attracted to and find an affinity in what you're selling. So being able to craft those conversations, create engagement with certain individuals that harnesses who they already are and not trying to force and or make them into who you want them to be. So not trying to come over the top with your products and services and fit it into their life, but more so grow up from underneath who that group of individuals already is and come up and be synonymous and very cohesive with their life. Like the synapses fire together and feel very, 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 very cohesive. So, connecting brands with the people that they need is diving into the customers you already have, the past, the present, and even looking at future potential.
Yeah, that's a great description. And I think what I kind of instantly noticed there was, again, looking at B2C or B2B, I'd never hear a B2B marketer talk about customers like that, if you get me.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that's bad, really, or it's a problem. It's something that I'm definitely becoming more aware of, where it seems that people that have had maybe a bit more of a plethora of experience in both B2B and B2C seem to be able to understand just how deep that connection needs to go and what they need to surface, challenging assumptions.
I think at the end of the day, we compartmentalize because that's what we do as humans, right? B2B, B2C. And I've had and worked with plenty of people from walks of life from both sides of that coin across the whole entire globe. And what I've really, and I've seen a lot of different ways and people sway that, but really B2B and B2C, you have to kind of blur those together, in my honest opinion. And it's more like H to H. And you're like, what is H to H? It's just humans, human to human, right? It's like people to people, whatever you want to call it, customer to customer, human to human. Because no matter what, in B2B or B2C, you're still trying to connect with someone else that's going to buy your products or services, and that other person is another human. So if you're trying to sell me something, be it a service, yes, you're trying to sell my business something, but no matter what, you're trying to create a relationship with me in that I believe in what you're selling me. So you're trying to sell the human first and foremost. It's a human to human connection. Same with B2C. Like, you might not necessarily connect so much with the holistic piece of the brand, depending on what the product is. But I mean, if you think about crazy, brands out there like Apple, right? You might connect with more of a totality of what they've done for the whole realm of the brand versus just the specific product. But, if you're selling a broom, I'm just making this up, right? To spitballing. But if you're selling like a kitchen broom, you might not think, oh, wow, that brand is so amazing. But what it is that you're selling me is what I need, and it gets the job done. You might not have the same affinity for it as you would some maybe like a digital product or something of that nature. But, at the end of the day, it's still connecting to the human. You were talking to me about, psychotherapy and neurology and stuff. And it's just like, you really got to connect with that person more so than you do with the specific brand or organization.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's the emotions as well, isn't it? So, something around emotional engagement, whether you're buying B2B and you might be part of some complex, sales cycle, and, you work within, let's say you're within procurement, or you could be the decision maker, you could be the budget holder, whomever you may be. Along that journey, there'll be instances where you'll feel, maybe a bit concerned about, okay, well, now it's time to sign the contract, or apprehensive about, this is okay, we're going ahead with this. I feel like my reputation may be on the line, or I'm advocating a solution I haven't bought into before. But then let's say we were buying a car, when we go to the showroom, it's excitement, isn't it? It's that kind of thrill, and this is the thing about, again, whether it is B2B or B2C, engaging within those moments with people and factoring in the emotion and making sure that what's communicated to them in relation to that's really, really important.
Right. And those emotions that you talk about, and those feelings that you have, they lie along a spectrum. Some can be quick and short based upon the purchase, and some can be longer, right? It all depends upon the relationship with what's being purchased. So like you're giving the example of purchasing a vehicle. That's a whole different emotional experience to purchase that versus like casually going to the grocery store to purchase, sustenance, right? It's not as deep, but, I know I love these specific types of oranges, but the thought of that emotion and feeling is very short, and I get it and it's done. But like a vehicle, on the other hand, of that spectrum, it's still a similar relationship. Still the same types of feelings are happening. They just might be a little bit longer or a little more heightened or a little bit more pronounced based upon the purchase decisions. So yeah, I like that.
And I think lockdown has turned going to the supermarket and buying oranges into a moment of joy and ecstasy, given that there are the kind of three environments in circulation for us, the house, outside, the supermarket, back to the house. So we've got that situation going on now. In terms of, I thought it might be good to talk about a couple of your projects that you've worked on. So one being the Herbert and Gerbert Sandwich Shop, and also the Inbound Brew Co, the craft brewery. So I think what I'm interested in is, with those sort of projects, what's kind of the process in terms of the brand development? What's your process when a brand like that comes to you? Where'd you start?
Sure. Yeah, interestingly enough, both of those brands, I was actually in-house with them. So it was a little bit different relationship, rightfully so. But nonetheless, it's still something where, you're working from, yeah, it's already foundational, right? There's already a lot of pieces, especially for Herbert and Gerbert sandwich shops. I mean, that brand is, 20 plus years of age already. So it has a long history and a huge foundation. But coming into that brand, and what it needed was someone on the team inside of their marketing unit, right, to then help take that to the next level. And that's kind of where, funny enough as it is, I think about how I help take brands to places they've never seen before. That's a different capacity. Like, it can be a different capacity. Some brands only need to be, need that assistance to take them. The next level might be only so far, right? Whereas like some brands really need that like rocket ship emoji and really need to take off. So where I'm going to start from, it's all different. So there's not a one size fits all, right? It's asking the right questions. You understand where we're at, but often, more often than not, it's about uncovering what's currently happening, because as an outsider, someone that's not, really, really close to the brand, you're able to potentially see some of those holes with certain questions that you might ask. Also then based upon the goals and the output that the brand might be looking for. So in the case of the sandwich shop, right, we're looking at something that is, an experience by which we have a brand that is well known, rightfully so, to a degree in its local area, but at the same time still needs a lot of top line awareness versus some of the other sandwich shops in the space and the competitors across the street, let's say, from a brick and mortar perspective. It's diving in and understanding who that customer is, where they are, where they live, what they do, where they're at, what kind of lifestyles that they live. And it all comes back to who the customer is, right? Who your clientele might be, who are going to be your purchasers, and do they know that you're even a thing? So fast forward a little bit into talking about Inbound Brew Co. Joining in that brand endeavor was like, it was a brand new brewery in downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota area. And we were really close to Target Field, which was the local baseball stadium where the Minnesota Twins play. And they, as the brewery was there, essentially you can click the open light on and it can come on. But at the end of the day, like, you don't necessarily have all that foot traffic where people are walking by. Location is great, but you still need to do a lot of reach out to understand how to get those people to come into your doors, especially for that kind of product, right? You're trying to sell pints of delicious liquid over the bar counter, right? So that's about like really, it's really about getting into the guerrilla style marketing, as well as, your digital footprint as well. Like, so when someone is looking for that experience online, you want to be first line for their choices being made in that local area. So it's really tapping into and understanding, once again, about the potential customer. Who is in our local area? What is the demographics like? What does the disposable income look like? What is the turnover rate of people coming into that area? Who comes into that area for work? Who lives in that area? Who leisures in that area? What other attractions are local? Like, I say the baseball field as the example was the big attraction. When are the baseball games? How can we take advantage of those types of things? So, those are more of the brands that we talk about that I'm really, really in on and attached to, but more so like brands that approach and are more on a partnership standpoint. It's definitely coming in with a fresh perspective, no matter the industry that it is, and seeing what they actually need from a brand positioning standpoint. And I'm always the one, at least from my experience, looking at your baseline digital footprint, right? Because nowadays, if you're experiencing a brand out in the wild per se, I know it might be a little bit different right now because of many factors, but you're usually taking to this. We have this in our hands, which we're then able to find a lot of information like at the snap of a finger, right? So taking that information and finding what you need about a brand. So looking at the foundation or digital presence, that's usually where I like to start, looking at your digital presence and finding what's missing or how we could increase, or just as simple as, are you engaging with your audience online? You probably have social channels set up if you're, already somewhat of an established brand. Are you responding? Are you engaging with your consumers?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a brick and mortar location, depending on what you're selling, are your customers talking to you via a messenger system, via a review-based system? Are you responding to those reviews or messages in a timely fashion? So
Mm-hmm.
in real life, in actual real physical live and live in color life, if you were to ask me something and I didn't respond, and I just turn around and walk the other way, you would immediately discredit, or your trust might go way down in comparison to where it was in the initial engagement. It's the same thing. It's blurring those lines between the physical and digital world, and people that are coming to you and asking your brand something. Someone needs to be there physically answering those people, or communicating and engaging with them, because if not, they're going to go somewhere else and buy another product over here, or find somebody else to service them in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it all goes back to the consumer, I believe. Just because you need them, you need people like you and I, who are consumers of brands, products, and services, to fuel your business. It's the most important piece.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think in terms of just thinking about a brand that, let's just take the sandwich shop. If you walk in there as a customer and the experience is they're very friendly, again, you go in there for the sandwich, but you also go in there for, let's say, the owner is a bit of a character and a little bit quirky. Again, who knows? But in terms of the digital presence, then obviously, if it's non-existent,
Right.
that whole flavor and feeling and experience is lost. So I think if there's an existing sentiment there that's very positive or warming, it's
Mhm.
then, I guess, amplifying what brings those consumers to that brand, to the physical store, but turning that into an online identity. And that's where the challenge is, I guess.
Right. And you have to remember too that the online, especially with the sandwich shops as the example here, there's a franchise, Herbert and Gerber Sandwich Shops is a franchise sandwich chain,
Mm-hmm.
sandwiches and soups in the upper Midwest of the United States. When I was working with the brand, it was 92 locations in 14 different states. I'm sure it's ebbed and flowed now through our global, interesting global times. But nonetheless, I mean, the digital sphere can transform a lot faster than the physical world. So what I mean by that is, you can have a digital presence that showcases your brand in one way, but then your consumer can step into the actual thing that they went from the digital, that drove them to the physical. And if that experience doesn't feel cohesive, if it doesn't feel just like it fits, like it's supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you're going to also throw consumers as well. And that was definitely one of the challenges for me and my team and my director of marketing. um, was we had many shops that had been there for many, many years, and it was, how do we bring our brand presence, which is all encompassing, real world, physical, live and live in color world, to our digital presence, our digital world, and make them really fit so that it feels cohesive end to end,
Mm-hmm.
from brand awareness to actual purchase of sandwich. And there's more than just like the colors and the logos and like pictures and memes and videos. It goes down, in that case, it goes to like the actual shop and what it looks like, and the people that work there, the employees, and the customer experience and the customer service, and how you're treated when you're actually in the store, and how
Mm-hmm.
you're treated when you're delivered a sandwich at your doorstep. It's all encompassing. It's very holistic. A lot of people get caught up in the fact that, like, oh, I got to post on Facebook all the time so that people know that, we have this thing coming out, or we're doing this special deal or whatever. But you have to remember, there's only a certain amount of people that are there in that space and place and seeing that. How are you going to translate that message across all the different touch points in which you interact with the consumer beyond the digital sphere? That's why I'm talking about blurring the lines between the physical and digital, so that you have a customer experience that is seamless across all channels that you might come in contact with a potential customer or consumer of your product.
And I think even if a consumer was unable to put their finger upon what was wrong. I think people subconsciously feel if something is wrong, and they just wouldn't be able to surface that or talk about it. It's the same, I think, with UX and design. It's something about this doesn't feel right. I can't, I'm not going to even try to explain what it is, because I'm shopping and I'm going to move on to the next thing. But whatever it is that puts them off, often, again, I think, depending upon your stance or your view of design in general, and its role and its importance, sometimes that can be overlooked. So in terms of branding, what would you say that B2B companies could learn from brand or from B2C in terms of brand marketing?
Sure. Yeah. I think it goes back to something we already touched on. Like I said, H to H, human to human. Like B2C brands are so hyper focused on their actual customers themselves, and trying to learn as much as they can about those specific customers that are buying their products. I think the same needs to be. I think that hyper focus can help in B2B space. Like we discussed a little, like trying to, from B2B side of things, like you're trying to sell your services, suite of services or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, like, yes, you're trying to capture an audience that would be, let's just say you're selling a SaaS product as an example, and it's perfect for the 500 to 1,000 person size organizations. You're looking for that to be utilized by the whole organization. But at the end of the day, like if that's you, Sam, selling it to me and my company or organization, you're still having that relationship with me. Your relationship building with me in order to, increase my efficiencies through your product or your widget, so that I can use it for my whole team, and my brand or my company or organization becomes more efficient with whatever your service might be. Not looking too far beyond and thinking about the whole of everyone using it, but coming right back to the us and focusing on the one-on-one relationship as much as possible, which I know can get difficult in B2B sense because it's a little bit more grand than that at the surface level. So I think, just really getting back to, I think B2B can capture from B2C what is still that really, really hyper-focused connection on the individual versus the en masse.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think in one thing that I remember reading earlier was around, obviously, given this year and lockdown and digital being, the focus on digital has been growing and growing. But given the existing situation, the pandemic, that's got even, it's even more of a focus, and there's even more content being produced. There's more noise. And I think, a couple of things that I thought might be good to ask you around, how do marketing teams or businesses still collaborate or brainstorm well during a lockdown? Do you know what I mean? Without the whiteboard and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's great. I actually had just recently put out a post on LinkedIn about that concept. That's one of the things that I truly do miss sometimes, is that brainstorm or think tank or collaboration environment where you get in with a few of your coworkers, or maybe it's a brand you're consulting with or something, and you get to get in that room and you get to really just like war room it and whiteboard, and you're really going to town.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's definitely a difficult scenario, because for me, it's that physical energy and physical presence of other humans that you just can't get through even this digital medium that we're in right now. Like, I'm not actually with you, so I'm not in your energy sphere, and maybe you don't. There's going to be probably plenty of people that will see this content and digest it and be like, wow, yeah, energy, great. Like, it's not really, I don't really understand that, or I might not believe it, or I might not think it's like a thing. But that's okay, because we're still going to talk about it regardless, which is like, you're unable to really, really be inside of other people's energy spheres and really feel the body language and feel what they give off and exude just naturally by being in this, universe and on this, floating rock, so to speak. So, go ahead, man.
And I was going to say, energy is super important, especially with collaboration. I think the one thing that I always ask before a meeting is, tell me what the meeting's about, what we're going to brainstorm, so I can come in with a list of 30 things that I thought when I was walking around town. I'm one of those people that once I'm in, the collaboration is great, but I think when someone lands it on you, they land it on you. Right, 10 minutes, we're going to solve this problem. What that problem that we've had for the last 2 years, you just like, it's almost like it sends there's just this, oh God, like, I'm going to have to come up with something. And I think it's always interesting how people come up with things, isn't it? Because I think some people in that scenario almost thrive. And then I guess it's a matter of introvert and extrovert, perhaps, and where you find your inspiration. But I'm interested to see what happens with that again, due to lockdown and kind of ideas. It's how are teams going to collaborate well? It's a difficult one to answer.
I think and it seems so trivial, but in the last 10 plus months for me, collaborating with other individuals, and people have gotten good at it, but there's still people that are, I don't know if the right word is afraid or not, but it's as simple as turning on your video camera.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we've gotten to a degree good at, a spectrum of us has gotten good, percentage of us has gotten good at like this kind of communication, a Zoom call or a Google Hangout or Skype or FaceTime or whatever you want to use. But I still collaborate with people that like, it's still just like a talking head, or not even a talking head. It's just like a square with their initials, or the name on the screen. And it's like, everything I've been talking about, even I keep going back to like this blur the lines concept between the physical world and the digital world. Because we are in this state, we have been forced to communicate in this medium. Well, if we were in an office building or a conference room or a coffee shop, we would be together. So let's try to, as I say, blur those lines and be together as much as we possibly can without actually being able to be in the same space together. And someone like you and I are connecting across the world. I mean, this state of the world has driven us to be able to connect with someone like you. The chances of me and you connecting are still fairly decent, but at the same time, like, I feel like this has also put people into a mindset that you can collaborate with anyone and everyone from anywhere, But
Exactly.
it's a simple concept of just like, turn your camera on. Because if you were in real life, I'd be seeing you in real life and you couldn't have the choice to turn you off.
Well, if we think about Slack and the communication tools, I think that's the danger of them. They're very widely adopted across a lot of businesses, and they are amazing. What they do, but like you just mentioned, in terms of the issues can be around collaboration, because I think we all know, just by using WhatsApp or whatever kind of messaging tools, and someone says something to us and we're like, what do they mean by that? Or there's so much that's lost, and conversations can happen, and then you're like, you log on an hour later and you see it and you're like, oh, I wanted to get involved in this. And again, I think the collaboration, although perhaps like you mentioned earlier about energy being missing, there is still a conduit here to do collaboration. It's just people need to be willing participants and probably have a little bit of appreciation for what, this was unachievable not so long ago. So we should be thankful for that, at least.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, text on a screen is very difficult. You don't get the emotion, you don't get the inflection of voice. So anytime that we can actually communicate and collaborate in this video sense, I think is best. Like you said, Slack and those types of messenger systems, even using social as a channel to produce content, such as LinkedIn, myself, there's people are easy to take offense. I mean, I said that 2020 was the year of the offended, and they're going to roll over their dates. It it's tough because you can write something and text on a screen and somebody can interpret it in a completely different way. But if I actually got to say it to you in real life, you might not have been so offended because of the way that my voice had inflection with it, or the way that it came across, or the energy that I gave to you because we were in the presence of each other, or even, a system like this being on a Zoom call as an example. So
yeah, we might have been able to avoid the multitude of Twitter arguments and even LinkedIn arguments and all the rest,
right.
where there's maybe a bit of kind of etiquette, and I think people need to be a little bit more forgiving when we all say things. And I think in terms of kind of a professional outlet, we all have our opinions on how something may be run or should be run, but it's easily lost, isn't it? I think in terms of sort of digital fatigue or email marketing fatigue, or again, there's something that I ask myself, what is the way to overcome this in 2021? Because we know that 2021 is going to be, digital will continue to be the dominant channel, because we're all staring at our phones and screens. We have, there's nothing else to do. But I'm wondering, is there anything around, or anything that you kind of think around in terms of insights, or what marketers can do this year to stand out? I feel like disruptive brands may have like they always do, the edge, because they always have something slightly more interesting to say, or they may be a bit provocateur, or they might, but if you're not, how are you going to cut through all of everything that's going on?
No, I hear you. You're right. There's going to be those disruptive brands, and not everybody can be a disruptive brand. And I think what I would give, and even what I do with some of the current partnerships that I have set up with some brands, is being very, very mindful. And once again, I know that seems so rudimentary. Like, I'm always mindful about everything I do. But if you actually pause for a moment and focus in on what you're actually trying to deliver to someone at its core, not just saying all the things to say all the things. Don't just give them everything. That's how you can cut through, I think, all the noise. If you want to stand out in that inbox of 49 new emails to someone in a day, as an example, very hypothetical, but you're sending out an email to 5,000 people in your database. How can I get higher open rates? How can I get more engagement, more click-throughs, get people traveling to where I want them to go? Be very, very mindful, right? We're being over inundated with so much stuff because, like you're saying, this digital space that we're in, and like we're so much more focused in the digital arena. It doesn't even matter, because I've been saying that for over a decade, like everything's going more digital. It's like, no, not going more. It already is. We're just riding the wave, it's really focusing and being mindful of the content. I'm going to give you an example, like a timepiece brand that I'm working with right now. Me and one of the guys that actually is one of the founders, and a guy that's really running the show, sometimes they backed a Kickstarter earlier in 2020, and it was a successful Kickstarter. I'm working on the product launch right now, and sometimes we come out with Kickstarter backer updates to update our backers through the journey by which we're developing the product. And sometimes, we send a Kickstarter backer update out that is, maybe a few paragraphs long, nothing crazy, but we'll spend a solid amount of time, definitely 60 minutes, sometimes upwards of 2 hours plus, crafting that message, because we're in attempt to be so mindful about the information that we're giving them, because we actually put our full and undivided attention into something that we give them. It's not about strategizing. There's not a strategy behind it. It's just about being mindful and present with the content that you're producing for someone to digest. Would I digest it? Is this relevant to me? Does it provide the right value to me in relation to the brand? Will that then be translated and, reflected the same to the people that we're giving it to? That's why we spend the time and energy on producing that mindful piece of content. And right now I've been talking about updates and emails. It can be with anything and everything that you produce, from podcast content to blog content, written content, social posts, and things of that nature across all channels.
Mm.
So yeah, I would just hone in on the mindfulness.
Yeah, and I think it's deviating away from the autopilot or the BAU. I think sometimes, again, marketers can very much get caught up in that. It's it's bi-weekly comms, and what are we going to
Yeah.
do in next week because we need to do something,
Right.
and it then becomes the intent or the place of creating that content comes from a different place, doesn't it? It's not about actually what is it that, again, whether it is a customer, prospect, or whomever, what is it that what is one of the biggest problems that they're facing right now, and what is the best way of us delivering something to them that actually is helpful. And it's easy to say as well. It's an easy one to kind of go, wow, just give, solve a problem for them, or just give them. But crafting good content, I think, as
Yeah.
any marketing professional knows, is that deep understanding of the customer and hard graft in actually creating it and challenging assumptions. So I think that's your piece around presence there is, and mindfulness is, it's interesting that it's almost applying a a more meditative sort of state to sort of business and your kind of day-to-day activity, which I quite like. I'll have to do that myself more.
Yeah. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've been working on crafting content for over a decade, for B2B brands, and both sides of the coin, service based and product based. But a decade ago, I was all about automation, and not that I'm not for automation to a degree, not that we have to go down that rabbit hole because we could be here quite a while.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was crafting content for content's sake. Content is king. We got to put more content. We got to give the people
Mm.
more and more and more, and automate, automate, automate. And it's just like, at one point in I mean, it's taken me a decade to come to this point to be able to say, be more mindful with what you're doing. You want to stand out. Don't just craft to craft to craft. I get power and numbers can work to a degree, but at the end, there might be a law of diminishing returns there.
Yeah.
So, a decade plus ago, creating content, automating the shit out of it, it's like, I don't know, because it's too overwhelming nowadays for consumers, and there's a
Yeah.
spectrum that people lie on, right? Some people love it and some people distaste it, and it's a bell curve, but it's all over the place. But I still say, it's taken me a long time to actually grasp the concept of being mindful and present with the content and having intent, right? Being intentional
Mhm.
and not just doing it because we're doing it. Like you said, like, oh yeah, man, we got to get our biweekly newsletter out, and you're sitting around with your team, or maybe you don't have a team and it's yourself, and you're like, well, I got to do it because I got to do it. And you don't have to do it. If you don't have anything that you believe is valuable to yourself, does it resonate with you first and foremost about your brand, company, or organization? And if it doesn't, then don't gift it to other people because they're going to feel the same way about it.
Yeah, and I think the automation vendors have very much sold their own use case to a lot of people, haven't they? So I think, when you see all this content and ebooks and e-guides and it's all automation, we buy into it, and then we're using the approach, and then we wonder why some of the content efforts don't exactly hit the mark or land exactly where we want them to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe a final question. We kind of briefly discussed about kind of well-being and, especially given the current climate. So, what's helped to keep you sane and grounded through lockdown?
Sure, that's a great question. So it's going to be interesting, but it was a layer. It was a delicious layered chocolate cake of life uh, that got me to where I am right now so far, which is a magnitude of things. It wasn't like I just did this and that helped me keep my sanity and mindfulness and focus. I actually layered into my life multiple things. I layered in daily yoga practice and mindful meditation. And yes, there are some days where I'm not able to practice because maybe I have a conference call or I got a thing to do or whatever it might be. So just being mindful of an attempt to practice as often as I can. and getting into that mindset of mindful meditation. I was in the craft beer and brewing industry for over a decade, and I actually eliminated alcohol from my life in 2020. So I also have went alcohol free. Uh, I eliminated all of my social channels besides LinkedIn, where I'm focusing effort on my independent marketing and creative consulting business. So Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok. I don't know, the list goes on and on, right? I eliminated myself off of those channels because now, rightfully so, there's a use and a purpose to them to a degree. Just for me personally, I found myself mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, and I could find myself on my couch 2.5 hours later, looking up from my phone, looking around and going, wow, I could have spent that 2.5 hours doing so many more things than being here. Now, great content, great brand content, great, pictures and videos and images. But at the same time, we still spend a lot of mindless time looking at stuff that might be funny, but it's just crap. We're so sucked in to this. It's like, if you could just plug this into me, like, and I could just get the information that way, I'd have time to do other stuff. But rightfully so, those are a few of the layers that I eliminated to focus more time and energy on what I wanted to do. And honestly, what I want to do is spend more time on doing things I love, like mountain biking, not here currently right now because there's a lot of snow, but what does that mean? I can go outside and play hockey more often. I can go snowboarding, but in the summer doing a lot more mountain biking, tending to my garden in my backyard, being outside just in general. And I focused on just spending more time outside. We spend an inordinate amount of time inside already with what our world was like before this current state. And now we're spending even an inordinate more amount of time indoors. So the one piece of advice that I give everyone and anyone, no matter where you're at, even if it's like today, it's -5 degrees out here, is get outside. Bundle up if you're in that type of environment. If not, if you're on the coast or something, or somewhere where it's beautiful, warm, and sunny, it's a little bit easier maybe to get outside. But still, you'd be funny and surprised to find that people that live in a climate that is still beautiful still spend tons and tons of time outside or time inside. So I say go outside and be in the natural world. Take a fresh breath of the wonderful air that's out there. So.
Yeah, I'd echo that. And I think, it's moving and moving outside. I think obviously me being in Manchester in UK, today was atrocious in terms of weather. It was smashing it down, going out with the umbrella, fighting with it down the street, but I went for 2 walks, and it's one of those where it has to happen in my head. I'm like, well, I'm going to get wet. And I think the elements and all of these things that people become disconnected with, it's not this tragic state of affairs that you should kind of leave the house in a rage. It's kind of, laugh at it, or, at least kind of, again, have some gratitude. At least it may remind you of something even, but I think, like I say, I think moving's a key one. I think one of the other things for me that's been big is there's an app called Waking Up from Sam Harris that has been fantastic for, I think, attention, and some of the conversations on there with some of the neuroscientists that Sam speaks with are also sort of fascinating. But this idea of, wherever you choose to direct your attention day to day, especially right now, is really important. And coming back to what you've said around eliminating channels, especially unhelpful sort of social channels, if you're kind of mindlessly scrolling, whatever it may be, but it's having that ability to kind of have that, that moment where you question, well, what is it that I'm actually doing right now? As I'm walking down the stairs to open the cupboard to grab the Cocoa Pops or the cereal, and just, if you're on autopilot, then you're gonna, in the bowl, let's have it, let's have some more, and there's no kind of question or no interception. But with some mindfulness, or at least kind of a practice of doing that reflection, it's strange how it seems to kind of permeate day-to-day moments, and then you sort of go, oh yeah, like, and you may even have moments of kind of gratitude. I think that's something I've noticed with those kind of, or meditation in general, even if it's just 10 minutes a day, you'll step outside and see something,
Yeah.
and it's a strange kind of way that it happens, but it's nice that when you meet other people that are also perhaps doing a similar practice, they usually say similar things as well.
Yeah. And I think it's the taking for granted. That's what you were just talking about. Like you're walking down the stairs, you're opening the cupboard, you grab the bowl, you pour the cereal, you pour the milk, or if you're a milk and cereal on top, that's weird. But, it's we just take those things for granted. My biggest thing is the light switch. Like when I walk into my basement, you don't even think about it. You just flip it on, you're down there and the lights are on. You just, and that's a very, very small example, but when you're mindful of those things, you're paying more attention, you're slowing life down, and you're actually focusing in. Now, the light switch or cleaning the plate after you eat it might not be overly purposeful in your life or like something that you like really, really thoroughly enjoy. But because we take for granted that the soap and the sponge and the water, when you turn it on, is going to be there, you don't even think of it.
Mm-hmm.
So being mindful means also not to take things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And not that we have to get in a big old esoteric conversation right now, taking things for granted beyond the light switch, really zone in and focus all that right back into this right
Mm-hmm.
here, the self, this vessel that we have that carries this mind and body and spirit and soul. We take this for granted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do too, and have for many, many years. I'm working on focusing on the fact that this is a gift and it's not guaranteed that it's going to be here in 60 seconds from now. The chances are pretty good that it will, but don't forget that life is fragile, not to be scared of it, but knowing that it's a very fragile thing and not to take it for granted. So really focus on today and the present and being mindful that you are alive right now in this moment, and use your time very wisely on who you talk to, the things that you do, what you do for enjoyment, what you do for work, because you're the only one that can change the self and for the only betterment of the self. So yeah,
Yeah,
don't take the self for granted.
yeah, that's a really good message, and I think the appreciation, the gratitude is it's one of those that really stands out. I think when something happens as well. I woke up one day, obviously I slept funny, and when you can't turn your neck, like just the slightest little turn,
Yeah.
and it's locking up, and I'm just like, oh, and it's so silly, walking down the stairs straight head, trying to cook something, every time the slightest movement, this just spasm of pain, and you're like, it's so funny that twist of fate of me going to bed and waking up, I'm now in agony all day. But
Right.
before, the day before, I wasn't buzzing about that prospect at all.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating kind of what perspective I think can do. But yeah, I think, to sort of close up, Spence, I think, thanks for joining me today. It's been a great discussion. Great to get your insights around brand and marketing. And yeah, I look forward to catching up with you again, sometime soon, hopefully as well.
Yeah, it's been wonderful, Sam. Great conversation. And, I look forward to our continued conversations from here throughout time.